All right, we're here live from MJBiz with the Cash News Podcast. Shaun,
hey Tom,
good to see you, brother. This is the first time we've been together. I don't know how long. So a couple of things. We're live, and as always, when you're live, things can happen. So we're relying on conference Wi-Fi. So anybody that knows about that knows that things go wrong. And we've got like 6 different audio devices going here. So hopefully you can hear us. And we're gonna have some virtual guests, some folks that couldn't make it, and some actual guests. So we're gonna actually bring our first guests in. And you got to bear a little bit with us because we're in a booth, so we got to go grab them and have them come in, and we'll do intros. On the YouTube chat, you can go ahead and ask questions or chime in, or as always, we'll rebroadcast this on the podcast. So if you're here watching us live, by all means, ask questions. Our producer Samantha's birthday is today, so everybody's got to say happy birthday, Samantha. And so Samantha stayed with us virtually to help us get this going, and she'll manage the question and answer side. So we're going to get our first guest.
Yeah, we're super excited. So thanks for being with us. Hold on one second.
So if you hear the background news, there's probably, I don't know, 30 or 40,000 people walking around, and the background here is in the conference. So we'll come on in, guys.
You don't need me. Do you have your
You're
phone?
live. We're all live right now.
Give me your phone.
Put it on airplane mode. It's on
I
airplane
don't care.
mode. It's all good.
I don't trust
There
you.
might be an important call that comes in while we're doing this.
So as we said, we're live, right? So there's a whole bunch of people in the booth that don't want to be on video or audio here. So I'm gonna let Shaun get in the middle here. We have our first guest.
Yeah, our first guest. We're thrilled to be here with the Blinc Group and Jay, you're their CFO. Yeah,
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
great. Thanks for being here. So we've got. Don't get confused. We've got the camera's over there, so
Okay.
that's where we can look, and the mics will pick us up.
Okay.
But really, with the cash news, we really wanted to just take this opportunity to talk to you about here at MJBiz. You know, it's cannabis and all the interesting intricacies that go on with financing, cash movements, and funding in the cannabis space. So we want to talk to you about that. But first, maybe give us a little bit about Blinc.
Okay, sure.
What is it that you guys do? And we'll go from there.
Well, the Blinc Group is that we design, develop, and supply premium best of breed vape hardware to the cannabis industry. So we're a cannabis ancillary company. We don't touch the plant, which for the purposes of moving money around, that's sort of a blessing. It's a mixed blessing, I would say. On the one hand, we don't have to literally have cash like some of the other people. We don't need one of those safes that they're exhibiting around here. But on the other hand, banking is a humongous challenge because even though we're non-plan touching, as far as the banks are concerned, we might as well be, is what it comes down to. It took me probably a year to even understand, why are you giving me such a hard time? I'm like, we import like these pieces of metal. Like I would say, like if you put water in it, it would make steam. Like it's really nothing cannabis about it. And somebody explained, well, your customers who are producer processors from mostly in the United States and Canada, they're plant touching, so their money is somehow tainted. So therefore, we lost our merchant account from PayPal twice. We lost a banking relationship with one of the major commercial banks, and now we're well banked with a real proper bank. But at the same time, it keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
So I was actually looking on the floor some of the other banking solutions here to just have a backup, frankly, in case something goes down.
How many like hurdles do you guys have to jump through? So you say you have like an established good bank account now with a good partner. Are the hurdles that you have to meet on a day in, day out basis from a regulatory standpoint? Are they super cumbersome? Is it manageable?
I mean, from a financial perspective, not really. I mean, we're blessedly from a tax compliance standpoint, you don't have the 280E issues that most of the people in the plant touching part of the industry do. That is a blessing for sure. Mostly, as it concerns us, is we send a lot of wires because our entire supply chain is located overseas, and so I'm probably sending up to 10 wires a week. And previously, I needed to go to the bank to do that because the bank we're at doesn't offer that service online. So meanwhile, it occurred to me, so well, is there a level of banking that we can participate in that will enable us to send international wires from the desktop? I'm like, sure, you have to apply. So I filled out the paperwork, and they went to the bank. The branch manager said, okay, great, now we're just going to kick this to corporate, and they're going to review your account. Do not have anybody in the corporate learn of us at all. That absolutely would have backfired. I'd be back to square one trying to hunt for a new bank all over again.
I mean, it's interesting. We deal a lot with the physical cash movements, and we know that space really well. And I know, a lot of banks have even gotten out of, forget the cannabis issues, but just cash in general, moving cash because it's risky.
Oh, yeah.
And then you throw cannabis into it, risk goes up even more. So it's definitely a challenging thing. Are you finding, as you've walked the floor here and seen everybody at MJBiz, are you finding some good solutions out there?
Well, I mean, right now, I feel like the short answer is yes, but unfortunately, I'm not really shopping for a solution right now, but I have a lot of literature in case I need one in a pinch. And I was mentioning you guys before we got on air that we signed up with a foreign exchange payment service called Cambridge Global Payments, and they're great. This now I can send wires for less money from my desktop in whatever currency I need. And so we pay certain vendors actually in Canada now in Canadian dollars, which is super easier than going to the bank. Sending money to Canada is incredibly hard for a country that speaks English and right across the border, and in China also. So it's made it much easier. What's ironic is that I could also now send like Chinese currency, which the Chinese partners have no interest in receiving whatsoever.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and we do. So this podcast is sponsored by Control Tech and Currency Research, and one of the things that we hear a lot in currency research is just what you're saying, kind of that cross-border movement of funds. And again, take cannabis out of it, the cannabis funding aspect of it. It's a challenge to do. It's slow, it's expensive. It's just a problem. And we've got a lot of conferences that deal with that. But the thread is always the same. The new technologies are out there, they're coming, but it takes some time.
What about risk mitigation? So like you said, it keeps you up at night. What are you doing? I mean, at any time you can get a plug pulled from a bank. So you have backups in mind. I mean, how are you managing?
We have a couple different accounts at the one bank, and like I said, our merchant account, which had some funds in it, was killed. Unfortunately, when that happened, we literally just had $41 in it. So, and they took that, literally lost that. So, mercifully, that was the end of it. But absolutely, in the next month, plan on opening up another account just to keep money somewhere else.
So I know, and it's like a secret. There's about 220 banks in the U.S. today that bank cannabis. There's no list that's out there. They keep it very quiet, but we hear horror stories all the time where people are banking for a while, and then one day, basically, they have to fight to get their money back. So that was one of the things that we consistently hear. And the other thing we consistently hear is the exponential cost of transferring money when it's related to cannabis. Sometimes it's a difference. It could be 20% more, 30% more than what a typical banker would deal with. Are you seeing that, or with this Cambridge solution, is it kind of a little bit more leveled out?
It's made my life so much easier because it's, again, the per transaction fee is lower, and I don't have to walk to the bank and sit there and wait for a banker to actually literally do the work for me on a day in, day out basis. One of the challenges with the proper banks that we have, well, first of all, I want to say, I'm aware that there's a list. Like, whenever I would call other people in the industry to say, well, who you use?
Yeah.
Right. And it turns out credit unions are a big.
Yeah,
they're
finance
big
is
ones.
a big one. It's funny. The last time we talked to someone and we started, it was like around 220, and I think there was a Wall Street Journal article about 3 years ago that said there were 185, and it was like this big, but it was mostly credit unions. When I say mid-size, still $4 or $5 billion entities, but very quietly they're doing it, and they're actually making a lot more. They're charging differently, but it's it's up and down.
And you have to stay at that kind of state charter level.
Yep.
You gotta be kind of.
Well, comes the eventual passage of the Safe Banking Act, which it always passes in one house repeatedly, but that's that in 225 will get jumped bus, right? So I'm sure that the major banks, the Chase banks, Citibanks will jump into this immediately. And frankly, where I think that would really benefit us is we'd love to be able. We have things manufacturers. We'd love to avail ourselves of their very traditional credit products, right? The things that credit products were made for manufacturing things, but we can't access that at all. So at the show there are many alternative lending products, but those are expensive.
Yeah,
and
very
right.
Yep.
And so it's a high class problem to need it, but it's like something you don't want to use, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, it's the innovation that's coming up in this space. I mean, that's one of the things that struck me just walking around on the floor in there. I mean, not just the finance space, but just the innovation in the cannabis space is there in all aspects, including the finance space. So it's good to see that there are even markets developing to solve this one big problem.
I mean, even for us, it's a smaller part of our business. Well, it is our business, but if we were a grow or like even a farm, I mean, there are huge capital needs for that end of the business, as well as the processing and all the fixed equipment, real depreciable like goods. And I mean, that's been one of the amazing things of the show. And I was actually seeing all the vendors of those products, and I was talking to somebody last night promoting the same thing we're talking about access to affordable, normal, plain vanilla capital. And he wants to be able, he sells harvesting equipment, and he wants to be able to have a product so he can, his clients, he can say, oh, you need to pay for this, it's expensive, let me hook you up. But really can't do that so much.
So what are your predictions from the safe for making? Because it feels like every time it's going to happen, it doesn't. Every time I see it,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I wish, like, I pay it scant attention, frankly.
Yeah.
But one is like, it'll be nothing, and then one day it'll happen. Like, oh, wow, fantastic.
Yeah, cool. Are there any other messages you want to leave with the audience, with the show, or anything you want to consider?
Well, now that we're talking about pass the safe banking act,
Yes.
it will
Yes.
take hours out of my week every week.
I feel like there's a hashtag in there somewhere.
Yes.
Right.
Let's start it. Let's start the hashtag. Well, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank
And
you,
and
guys
you
for
know what?
having me.
Feel free. Like, I think you should come back. We do the podcast. We have a weekly taping. You're more than welcome to come back. We're not in this environment of live with background noise,
That's
not
exciting.
knowing what's going to happen. But you're welcome. We'd love to have you on and talk a little bit more.
All right, great. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming in.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you.
It's a pleasure.
Great.
Appreciate it.
And we are live, so our next guest is outside. We're going to bring them right in because as everything with live, we do run through and have some technical difficulties. I think right now we're doing pretty well. So our next guest is coming right on in.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
So as our next guest comes in, forgive us if the audio isn't super clear. And as you can see, when we're doing video and audio, we got all sorts of channels. Uh-oh, our guest is coming in. We all know him. We all love him. Vic, come on in, man. We're live already. We're live.
Oh,
We're
wow.
live.
Look at this.
We're live. We're live on video, live on audio. We got all sorts of stuff going. Well,
That's
good to
awesome.
see you, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you. You guys look great. Thanks for doing this.
It's just good to see people again.
Yeah,
What
no,
a
I know,
show.
man.
It's been out.
I know I don't want to mess up your hair, but you gotta wear a hat for us at some point today. You can
I
do-
will wear a hat.
You could. We'll do it afterwards.
Yeah.
You know.
At the end when I'm walking up.
Yeah, exactly.
If you prefer the,
Yeah, if you
winter
prefer the
beanie,
prefer it in the cast, yeah,
Guys,
yeah,
you
yeah,
guys have done well.
Yeah.
I love this.
So
I love this.
I think Vic, you've been on before. Before we get started, why don't you tell the audience, who you are, what you do, and give a little bit of an idea. So I know everybody knows who you are, but just in case, because we got a global audience, they might not have met you yet.
No, absolutely. Thanks, guys, for having me. So, as Tom said, my name is Devjee. I run the US business for a company called CIMA Cash Handling. We're an Italian company by heritage. We manufacture cash handling solutions like recyclers and smart safes and customer-facing devices now. And we're here at MJBizCon to present a lot of what we do for this industry segment, which is obviously the cannabis space. And it's been a great couple of days so far. It's an interesting show. Never thought it was going to be this big. I'm blown away.
So it's funny, and we don't normally, we're very neutral in the space. We don't, when we have folks on, Vic is a friend of the podcast and works and does, but we were walking the floor, and the first thing when we saw the amount of attention that we used was the lack of cash handling in general at the show and how much of a miss it is. Good for you, right?
Yeah.
But so what's the show been like, and what are you hearing from a cash handling standpoint, the challenges and some of the things that you're working through? I know I got to hear some of the stuff when we were standing around, but what are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Right.
What's working? What's not working?
Sure. No, it's interesting, and there are certainly, a number of players in our space here at the show for obvious reasons. starting to become an interesting market for everybody in the cash handling space. I think everybody with a cash recycler and some software wants to go after the space, which is fine. I think it's a big market. What's really interesting and what I'm learning just from being at the show is exactly what you said, Tom. It's all about the education for the market. They know they have a problem. Right, that is absolutely true. So the minute they walk past our stand, they see, oh, that's a cash machine. What does it do, right? And so we end up having this conversation with them. But you can clearly see that dispensary owners, and whether they're small operators of 1 or 2 stores, or whether they're even large multi-state operators, need to be guided, right? They need to be guided down the right path. You need to uncover what their challenges really are. And then recommend a solution that's appropriate, right? I really don't think the right approach is, here's our recycler, and here's some software, and how many would you like to buy? That is absolutely not what this industry wants. It's not what it needs, and it's certainly not what we're doing. We're really focusing on understanding their challenges, understanding their requirements, and then recommending accordingly. And so I think once we have that conversation, and we take them on that journey and kind of help them understand what we can do for them, then it's almost an immediate conversation about, okay, so how much and when.
So what's the biggest benefit? Sorry, I
think it's a couple of things, right? For us, and then based on the conversations we've been having just at this show, the most important thing is time, right? It's not really about security, and I think this is what people get wrong about this industry. It's not like people are stealing from it, right? They're very secure environments. Like if you go to a dispensary, you'll see it's highly secure. There's a lot of cameras. It's all very secure. So I don't think theft is necessarily the issue. I'm sure it exists in some ways with staff potentially, but the real benefit is time. Because they're fundamentally cash-based businesses, the amount of time they need to spend preparing floats and dealing with change and dealing with end-of-day reconciliation. I mean, one of our customers told us just recently that at the end of the day, he got 4 hours of time back from his manager, right? Who's one of the most important people in the person in the store to be on the floor. I imagine that his manager is in the back office dealing with cash, right? And errors and counting and preparing floats and organizing change instead of being where it matters, right? Selling, right? And running the business. So, at the end of the day, I think that's really what it boils down to is the amount of time it takes to deal with cash, right? And the volume of cash that they generate. We just had a conversation with an operator, and one store in Chicago generates $250 a day. Can you imagine what that means in terms of managing physical notes associated with $250,000? Right? That's crazy. And so I think when you understand those challenges, then you understand and sympathize and really understand what they're having to deal with. And I think that dynamic is really important to address. So those are some of the conversations we're having. But it really is all about.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing like when we talk about tracking cannabis, like with RFID, people immediately think it's theft or safety, and like, no, it's an efficiency. And if you want it, you're gonna see huge efficiency in just making your folks feel good going to work. That's not a dreadful process.
Yep.
And then you go and I save hours and I get better results. So that's definitely what it is.
No,
So
I mean,
let's scoot a little bit over because I get the message that we're out of the frame. And then I know you had a couple of things. So
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, to your point about people's eyes kind of opening up when they see this walking by. I mean, I think we were only there for a couple of minutes, standing there and watching.
Yep.
But it was clear, even the gentleman we saw, it was like his eyes were just like, does it do? Like, oh my God, like you could literally see like the light bulbs kind of going off. Of, oh my God, this could like revolutionize my business.
No, it's absolutely true. And they get it, right? And I think if you take it down to a really granular thing, right? What is our machine actually doing? It's preparing a float, right? Automatically, so that no one has to count it. They know how much time it takes to prepare a float, how much time it takes that operator to count that float, sign off on it, right? And so on. So they know. So when they
God
see,
forbid you have an error.
yeah, exactly, exactly, and then you're doing it again, exactly. So but so when you show them what happens when you dispense a flow, then in literally 30 seconds, they're picking up their cash, walking off to their station to start their shift. That's when they get it, right? And it's almost as if that's all you need to show them, really. Yeah, the rest is like, okay, well, if you can do that, then it must do the reverse as well, right? And so we take them through that journey, and I think what's important as well is understanding that this industry is not about a one size fits all, right? It's that, there's a lot of cash, yes, but again, I had another dispensary owner that does $10,000 a day, right? It's a new dispensary, it'll grow, but does he need something big and high speed and high volume? So you got to take that sort of horses approach, which I've been preaching for the last 3 years, but it's becoming more and more relevant, especially in this industry. We've got such a cross reference, and such a broad range of businesses, right?
Yeah, and it's different from even state by state, or city by city, they're so different. I mean, you have, even walking through here, I mean, you have like some of the huge glitz and glam that you get in California, Nevada, where they want something that's going to look good, maybe even customer facing, that's like super slick. Kiosk and other states, no, it's just, I don't care what it looks like, just shove it back. So yeah, you're right. It's definitely
I think that's the important part is you gotta recommend the right technology for the right environment for what they truly want to gain, right? And that only comes from having a conversation rather than going, hey, here's my recycler, it's got some software, we can sell you 20 of these. That's really not the conversation to be having. Even at the expense of, and unfortunately, the situation of the market is this: they have a need. Everybody's in a lot of pain, right? Dealing with these operational things that they have to deal with, right? Cash being one of them. So the minute someone recommends a solution, right, that's even 50% of what they want, they'll literally jump on it, right? It's like, hey, if it's going to solve 50%, that's a good thing. So let's do this. So I think, but we're taking a very kind of consultative approach. At the end of the day, we're a manufacturer. I want to sell lots of machines, but we're taking a very consultative approach. We want to be the educator. We want to be let's gather some information. Let's truly understand what this industry needs, and then let's recommend accordingly.
So what do you last minute, we're asking everybody today, give us a prediction. Give us a prediction related to cash and cannabis. Anything. What's happening? What is it going to be like a year from now? Because we've gone through 80 weeks of a pandemic. It's been a wild, if you think about it, we can't make it up. So what's going to happen next?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think we're going to be flooded with a lot of work over the next 12 months. I pray we're going to be selling lots of cash machines, right? But with all the investments we're making in this space, but I think this problem is not going away. If anything, it's going to get worse because the industry is getting bigger. I mean, just look at the size of this show, right? Yeah. Look at the amount of exhibitors, right?
With the pandemic, with the show, like that, if you go to other shows that are small, this is by no means small.
I was certainly not expecting the scale of this show. Yeah. It's just unbelievable.
It's great,
absolutely. But it just goes to show that regardless, and I heard this comment just yesterday, chatting with some people. It just goes to show that it doesn't really matter whether this is federally chartered or federally, the federal government's on board or not. The industry is moving forward, right? Yeah. It's moving forward. Yeah. I mean, you just look at the diversity of the exhibitors in this sector, and that just tells you this industry is dynamic. It's moving ahead. It's aggressive, right? And it's going to grow.
Yeah. With a lot of innovation.
Yeah, with a lot of innovation. Yeah.
Oh, the technology is just unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, for everything, right?
We talk to package everything. It's so like everybody, and it's a niche business, right? It is different than everything else. It really is. Yeah. I try to compare it, and there's not a lot of analogies that you can compare it to.
Yeah. What I also think is going to change, and again, something that I'm starting to learn more and more of is it's definitely not just about a device that solves a problem, right? The next question is what about the armamentarium? What about the bank?
Yeah, I was going to say, we're getting a lot of questions on that.
So it's actually very, very refreshing, and it's very exciting that some of the dispensary owners and groups that we've been talking to are thinking about it, and I excuse the pun, holistically, right? They're thinking of it from a broader perspective, not just about a machine that does what we do, which is a good thing, right? It's because they're focusing on the whole solution. What about the CIT company? Do we have the right CIT companies in the right locations to service our needs? What about service? What about banking relationships? So we're finding that the more we're involved in the broader industry beyond just the technology, the more we're able to facilitate the right things for that customer.
Well, as you say that, it gets me thinking. I wonder because we've had to, because normal, because retail in general, non-cannabis retail, has been around forever.
It has.
And we've kind of had to, no one's really focused on the cash piece of that. It's always just existed, and it's just kind of this hodgepodge of
But a lot of
older
those
stuff.
elements have already been in place, right?
They've been in place, yeah. But I wonder, since this is a new industry and it's challenging from a regulation standpoint, and so there's all these new innovations, what we will be able to take from the cannabis industry. Because how you say, they're looking at it holistically, whereas a lot of retail isn't, because they're kind of fitting it into things.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
So are there learnings that will come out of this space?
And again, that's all fluid, right?
Right.
It's very fluid at the moment. Some dispensaries are just putting technology in just to solve some problems that they need, solved straight away. Some are looking at it a little bit more holistically, incorporating all the different components, and some are kind of a wait and see, right? And let's see how this evolves. And some are even going, well, once the Safe Banking Act's passed, then this may not be a problem, which I don't think is going to be the case, right? This is going to be a problem for a long time in this industry. There's no doubt. And I think, as an industry, and I'm glad you guys are doing this, I really am, and that's why I'm always excited to participate with you, because what you're doing is really helping the industry understand, what cash is, how important cash is, and making people aware that this is an industry that needs, some exposure and some help, right?
Well, it's funny though, because this is the constant theme that Shaun and I, as cash is going away, and then we go to a show like this, and people are like, I have, $600,000 literally, a day that I have to figure out within some of the really massive dispensaries. And then you guys were trying to figure out, and so that's where there's all sorts of, we talk about, I said cannabis, C-store, there's just so much cash. And if we're in Vegas, I'll tell you right now, there's cash everywhere. So it's not going away. I do, and we say often, and you're a living proof of this, that the way people handle it, the way people take, the way it's processed is changing, and it's changing pretty rapidly.
It is.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. So that's really, I appreciate the kind words, but that's what we're hyper focused on. And we're also, I think, okay with saying that there's definitely a change in the way people are using it. But understanding that from both sides, and like recyclers for cannabis makes sense, but there are a lot of people that need recyclers, need smart safes because they still have a heavy volume of cash. And the cost of moving cash is expensive. There's a safety element. And then the thing that is the efficiency, and we didn't talk about it today, but I know we'll talk about the next time around, is the data insights, what you learn, what you can learn.
Oh, absolutely.
And you really start to realize, wow, I didn't even know what was going on in my business. And you also can identify a whole bunch of other things. And just you can even get down to the point of understanding who's efficient from a standpoint of how to take it.
No, for sure.
So so there's tons of things. So thank you for definitely coming. I'm
No
going to
worries at
ask
all.
you, and everybody's listening.
Yeah.
We don't get as many live views as we do listen. So, but
Right.
we want to see a picture today
Yeah.
with hashtag the Cash News with a hat on.
Got it.
You gotta see it.
You
You
got
gotta
it.
see it. And
Absolutely.
you're welcome anytime, as always.
No worries.
We'd love to
Thanks,
see
man.
you.
Right,
And it's great to see you in person, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, it was.
You're looking good, by the way. Like I said, he's looking
He's
great.
looking great.
I wish I could listen to this guy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
As soon as I saw him, I'm like, tell him you're looking great.
I appreciate it. But it's great to see you. It's great to see the activity at your space.
Yeah. Super happy. Super happy.
And we are going to talk about that, about how we're kind of shocked and surprised at how little cash handling is here in general. when it and I think it will change because everybody we talk to was like, man, the light bulb goes on. I'm like, yeah, I've got all this other stuff, but then we have this cash issue that it's almost because of the banking that it gets left to the side because it's in some cases I don't want to say people have given up, but they've kind of taken like we got to put these in boxes and do it. So I definitely see that a change.
Yeah.
And with the legislation, regardless of the state banking, if you look at the states that are legalizing, it's just going to change again. It's going to change the way people use cash. It's a fact.
Oh,
So,
Sure.
but thank you so much for coming.
Thank you guys.
Good
I
to see
really
you.
appreciate it. Yeah, it's
Don't
awesome.
we're gonna.
I got a break from the stand
Yeah,
too.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Is
Thank
it-
you
is
so
it-
much.
yeah.
It's so good. I will absolutely be wearing that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thanks
Thank
everyone.
you.
Yep.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
We're gonna
Cheers.
take we're gonna take a short break from live streaming. We're gonna be back at 105 Pacific, 405 Eastern live. So we'll see you soon, and we have some virtual guests coming.
You're giving me a 10-minute break?
Yes, we're getting a 10-minute
Oh
break.
my God. All right.